Hello friends, in the past few lectures we have been considering the different precursors for the intergranular failure of the material at high temperature. So in a generalized sense we have been considering high temperature failure of the material, and since at the high temperature it is largely the intergranular failure that governs, or the intergranular crack propagations that governs the high temperature failure of the material, we have been confined to the intergranular crack propagation or intergranular failure of the material. So in this intergranular failure we saw two different precursors for the intergranular failure of the materials. There are two definite precursors that are prevalent during the high temperature failure of the materials. So these precursors that ultimately leads to the intergranular failure of the material at high temperatures are the cavities and wedge like microcracks. Now while considering cavities, we considered the nucleation rate because it is rarely one cavity that leads to the formation or the overall failure of the material, so you need different cavities forming along the different grain boundaries. So we considered nucleation rate. So if you look closely at the nucleation rate is nothing but the transition of the critical cavity to a supercritical one. This is achieved by the accumulation of vacancies. So this nucleation rate, even though it appears as the rate at which new cavities are being formed, even though it appears so, the way we defined it is in this form, wherein we consider a term for the migration and the accumulation of the vacancies, and a term that includes the number of existing critical cavities. Now, in addition to the nucleation rate, we considered the growth factors governing the growth of the cavities. We consider the thermodynamic factors, particularly in terms of the gradient in the chemical potential that allows for the vacancies to migrate towards the cavities and enable it to grow. So this was largely governed by the gradient in the stress, or the gradient in the chemical potential brought about by the stress, and also the surface or the curvature that was introduced by the shape of the cavity. So the radius of curvature is the principal variable here, dynamic variable, so to speak here. So in terms, or when speaking of cavities, we considered the nucleation rate and the growth rate. In contrast, when we considered the wedge-like microcracks or the wedges, the triple junction wedges, these formed as microcracks, meaning they were of the size that was much greater than that of the cavities. So we saw, or these were largely produced by or introduced by the grain boundary sliding events, and depending on how or number of grain boundary sliding events occur at a triple junction, the shape of these particular triple junction wedges varied, and we saw that how these triple junction wedges propagate and what is the mechanism of its propagation. And we also considered the components or the dimension that is used to measure this particular triple junction wedges. If you could recollect, at the end of the discussion or the previous lecture, we saw there is a unique mode in which these triple junction wedges propagate. That is, you have a definite length, that is the crack displacement opening will be of a definite length, and the triple junction wedge will propagate along the grain boundaries. So this triple junction wedge is largely introduced by the grain boundary sliding. However, in case of cavities, we have numerous factors that play a role, and one of this factor is the grain boundary sliding, and this you can understand by considering the shape of the cavity. And in case of grain boundary sliding, you will never have a formation of some sort of a circular cavity. So in addition to the grain boundary sliding, you have accumulation of vacancies that leads to the formation of cavities. You would have a constrained growth of these cavities. So these are the ways intergranular failure is introduced into the system at high temperature. Again, it is just introduced by these cavities and the triple junction wedges or wedge-like microcracks. Now these cavities grow, and also these wedge-like microcracks grow, and ultimately they form stable cracks. and this led ultimately to the failure of the material. So these precursors, they cumulatively form the cracks, and this ultimately lead to the failure of the material. Now in this lecture we will consider the growth of these cracks. So we will render some theoretical consideration to the growth of these cracks that ultimately lead to the failure of the material. Now that the aspect of study that deals with the theoretical aspect of the growth of cracks is referred to as the fracture mechanics. And even though we won't be able to get into much deeper concepts of the fracture mechanics, I will try to pack up as much as possible in this lecture. So this lecture, which will be the last one of this module wherein we have been considering the failure of the material at high temperature or during the creep behavior, we will consider how fracture mechanics, the concepts of fracture mechanics, how they change when we consider the creep or the high temperature failure of the material. So for that, let us begin by considering a representative setup as you would do in case of a conventional fracture mechanics. So a representative setup meaning, let us consider an infinite plate which is experiencing a mechanical condition, say for instance a tensile load. You have an infinite plate that is experiencing a tensile load, and you have within this plate a through thickness crack. So meaning it is through the thickness. If you can see, look through here, you will be able to see the other sides or something like that. So you have an infinite plate, and you have a through thickness crack in it, and the length of this through thickness crack is 2a. Now this being a plate, and it is experiencing or we are imposing a mechanical condition to it. When you consider the stresses that is experienced within this plate, we can distinguish or dissociate that into different components of stress. So if you could recollect your sophomore courses like strength of materials or introduction to mechanical behavior of materials, in those courses you would have considered the different components of stresses, that is the normal component and the shear component. And if you could recollect, there will be 9 components of stress. You can reduce it to 6 independent components and all those things. So this being a plate, the number of components of stress that is experienced by this plate will be 3. Had it been a three-dimensional structure, which is not a plate, meaning what we mean by a plate is the thickness is negligible, or the dimension of the thickness is negligible when compared to the other 2 dimensions. So you have here 3 components of stress that is acting within this material when you impose a mechanical condition of it. So these 3 components include 2 normal stresses and 1 shear stress. So you have, when you impose a mechanical condition, when you apply a tensile load to this plate, you can dissociate that stress into 2 normal stresses and 1 shear component. Now if I consider a point in this plate, and this point I realize it in the polar coordinate system with r and theta. So it is similar to that of the Cartesian coordinate system. Instead you will be considering one axis as theta and the other axis as r. So this you will be considering as theta, and along this axis you will be considering r. So any point you can mention it as r and theta. So if you treat this particular system in the polar coordinate, and then you assume a point within this plate. Now the stress experienced at this point within this plate will be dependent on these parameters or these variables, that is r and theta. So that means the normal stress will be dependent on r and theta, and also the shear stress will be dependent on r and theta. Now supposing we confine ourselves or we restrict ourselves to those points that are along the crack. So those points here, and of course since this assumption is reasonable, because in case of high temperature failure of the materials, we have intergranular crack propagation. So you would have a crack propagating in this manner, and we are confined ourselves, or we are focusing on the stress along this direction. So that means it is reasonable for us to assume theta is equal to 0. So once you assume a theta to be constant, the number of variables subsequently reduces. So the stresses, components of stresses now depend on r alone. and again it is since the normal stress that governs the or that drives the crack propagation. If you could recollect our previous lecture, it is normal stress that governs the crack propagation, and at times when we are fixed the theta, it is also possible that this turns into 0. We can just consider these two components of stress alone. Two reasons. One is the crack propagation is governed by the normal stress, and other is it is possible that depending on the orientation of your grain boundary, when consider theta is equal to 0, the shear stress completely vanishes off. Yes. Now, this is not a regular plate, so you have a crack, through thickness crack in it. So there is an influence of the presence of this crack, and this presence of the crack influences this component of strain. So in order to introduce the influence of the crack on the components of the stress, we introduce a term K1. So therefore, the stress, the normal stresses now depend on K1 and the position of the point, and similarly the K1 and the position of the point. So we are talking about a single point and also the influence of the fracture, or rather the crack that is present. So the crack, it offers an influence, and we are talking about a single point. So therefore this is equal, and it is given by K1 square root of A. So this is the expression. Sorry, pardon me, it's not A here, but rather R. We are talking in terms of R. So both these stresses, they are dependent on the position of the point, and you have K1. This is the factor that introduces the influence of crack that is present in the plate, and you have R. So I guess these concepts might be fundamental to someone who has already taken a course on fracture mechanics, but since for the sake of completion I'm introducing or reintroducing these concepts here, there might be some amongst you who have not taken it, and therefore I'm reintroducing it. So please pardon me if you are already familiar with it. So what you have is, now you have defined the stresses that is experienced by the plate in terms of a factor that introduces the influence of the crack and the positional term of a point that you are considering. Now this factor that talks about the crack or the influence of crack in the components of stress is expressed as this, pi A. So A is the dimension of the crack, which we have already seen, and this is the stress that you are imposing. So this is the stress that you are imposing, and what essentially is happening is, when you have a crack, this stress is being amplified by the size of the crack. So this is referred to as the this particular term that introduces the influence of crack or on the stress experienced by the plate is referred to the stress intensity factor. Now this stress intensity factor, it amplifies the stress that you introduce with respect to the size of the dimension or the size of the crack or the dimension of the crack. Now what you essentially have is, you impose a stress, and this stress in the regions close to the crack is amplified by this term, and this is referred to as the stress intensity factor. Now when you want to have this crack to propagate, then the stress intensity factor or the stress that is introduced or that surrounds the crack should be sufficiently high. So when you have a stress that surrounds the crack that is sufficiently high, the crack can propagate. Now the stress that is surrounding the crack is given by this stress intensity factor. So therefore there is a critical value for the stress intensity factor. Now before that, the one here, it means mode 1 of crack growth, that is a regular one wherein the crack grows by crack opening. So if this is your crack, and if it grows by crack opening, then it is referred to as the mode 1 growth. Again, you might already be familiar with these different modes, and this one here in this expression or in this term refers to the mode 1 growth. Now the critical stress intensity factor that is required for the propagation of the crack is are defined by the critical size of the crack. So when you have a critical size of the crack that is defined by AC, then when your stress intensity factor is greater than or equal to that of the stress intensity factor associated with this critical crack, then you would have a propagation of the crack. So this is a criteria 1. So what we essentially have defined is, we defined a stress intensity factor depending on the size of the crack that is present. When the size of the crack is of a critical size, the dimension is of a critical size, then you have a critical stress intensity factor. Now in the condition that you have, when the stress intensity factor is greater than that of the critical one, you would have a successful propagation of the crack. So this is one criteria that you can define based on the stress intensity factor. Now there is also another criteria that you can define based on the energy release rate. So this is referred to as the strain energy release rate. So this is one criteria that is based on the stress intensity factor. When the stress intensity factor, because of the presence of the crack, is greater than that of the critical stress intensity factor, which is based on the critical size of the crack, then you have a growth of the crack. Now the other criteria can be based on the strain energy release rate. So what this strain energy release rate is can be defined by considering, or this expression for this can be arrived by considering the change in the strain energy that a material experiences when you have a crack present on it. Supposing you impose or you do a work on a system, that is by imposing a stress, then the external work that you do by imposing a stress leads to the increase in size of the crack, meaning it increases the surface area of the crack. So this increase in the size of the crack is accompanied by a strain energy release. So you release a certain amount of strain energy when you increase the size of the crack. In addition to this contribution, so the work you do by imposing the stress increases the size of the crack, and this is accompanied by the release in the strain energy. In addition to this, there is also some amount of energy that is stored in the system, and that we refer to this in this manner, delta U. So there is a change in the internal energy of the system in addition to the increase in the size of the crack and the strain energy that is released. Now this is based on the conservation of energy principle. You do a work on the system, and the work is dissipated in two ways. One is you increase the crack size, and this action is accompanied by the release of a certain amount of strain energy, and there is also a change that you brought within the system that changes the internal energy of the system. So this is what the expression talks about. Now you can rearrange this expression in such a way that the strain energy release rate, the strain energy release can be expressed as the strain energy release rate as d by dA. So this is the rate of the change in the surface area of the crack, and that is the stress that is you impose on the material and the change in the internal energy of the system. So essentially what you have arrived at is, you have expressed is the rate at which the strain energy is released when there is a change in the surface area of the crack with respect to the stress that we have imposed on the system and the energy that is stored on the system. Now this, based on the strain energy release rate, you can also express a criteria, meaning this strain energy release rate can be expressed at K1 square by E prime. So this E prime is nothing but the Young's modulus for the plate or the plane stress condition. So this strain energy release rate, which favors the propagation of the crack, can be expressed in this manner as well. Now we have already arrived at criteria for the stress intensity factor. Now when you introduce this stress intensity factor here, you can arrive at a criteria for the strain energy release rate. So this is a criteria based on the strain energy release rate. When the amount of strain energy released, or the rate at which the strain energy released is considerably higher or higher than this critical strain energy release rate, then you have energetically favored propagation of the cracks. So this is the second criteria. So the first criteria is based on the K1C, that is the stress intensity factor, and the second criteria is based on the strain energy release rate. Even though, I mean, of course, this strain energy release rate or the criteria based on the strain energy release rate is also dependent on the stress intensity factor. So, depending on the size of the crack, you are able to achieve two different criteria. One is based on the amount of energy that is being released while the crack propagates. The other is the amount of stress that is being added due to the presence of the cracks. So based on these, you are able to arrive at two different criterions. So these criterions, they form the fundamental of the fracture mechanics. And now let us see how, in case of high temperature failure or in case of creep, these particular criterions vary. Now, this criteria here, it depends on the size of the crack. However, when you have a crack that is, instead of being sharp as these, because of the accumulation of vacancies, is relatively blunt. So instead of being sharp, the crack or that is present along the grind boundary is relatively blunt. Then because of the blunt nature of the crack, the stress intensity introduced considerably is reduced. So let me repeat, when the shape of your crack or the edges of your crack is blunt when compared to the sharp one, then the stress intensity, the amount of stress intensity that is being introduced considerably decreases. So therefore, what it means is that even though you might have the crack of the same size apparently, but because of these blunt edges, the stress intensity that is introduced in the creep crack. So these blunt edges are usually observed in the creep cracks or high temperature cracks because of the accumulation of vacancies. So the stress intensity in the creep crack is considerably lower than the stress intensity in the conventional cracks. So that means you need to have a different description for the criteria based on the stress intensity for the creep cracks. So because of this difference in the curvature at the edges, because of the bluntness, what you would need to have is a different criteria, because the amount of stress intensity or the amount of stress that is increased in these points is considerably reduced because of this blunt shape. So that means you need to have a different criteria. So that different criteria will be of this form. And this is much lesser than the criteria that you initially considered. So this is one of the difference that is brought about at high temperature by just considering the criteria for crack growth. So the first influence of high temperature during crack propagation is observed in the sharpness of the crack, and when the crack is blunt at high temperature, the stress intensity factor considerably decreases. So you need to impose additional amount of stress in order to overcome or bring about sufficient stress for the propagation of the crack. So this is one difference that you observe when you compare the crack propagation from that at high temperature to that of the ambient temperature. Now, this effect is also observed at the other criteria that is based on the strain energy release rate. So supposing even in the conventional case, the strain energy release rate, the criteria based on it is dependent on the stress intensity factor. In the similar way, for the creep, it is dependent on again the corresponding stress intensity factor. However, the denominator remains the same. And of course, since there is an influence of temperature on the Young's modulus, that aspect can also be included, but relatively this influence is quite small, and therefore the larger dominance, the dominant term is this term, which is brought about by the difference in the sharpness of the corners. In case of the high temperature cracks, you have blunt edges, and because of that the amount of stress intensity considerably decreases, so you need to increase sufficient amount of stress in order for the crack to propagate. So these are the two differences when you consider the high temperature crack propagation. One is the change in the stress intensity factor or the decrease in the stress intensity factor. The other is because of the decrease in the stress intensity factor, the strain energy release rate also decreases. So because of the high temperature, or when you consider high temperature of the failure, high temperature failure of the material, you need to account for this decrease in both the strain energy release rate and also the stress intensity factor. Now, in addition to this two criteria, that is the stress intensity factor and the strain energy release rate, you can also talk about another influence of high temperature on the crack propagation. So this you can consider by combining two expressions that deals with the strain energy or stress intensity factor. For instance, the stress intensity factor here is expressed in this manner. So the stress intensity factor, in general case, let us begin where it is expressed in this manner. So now, but the stress, the components of stress that we are talking about, that is the normal components of the stress, that is x and y, it is expressed in this manner. That is K1, or rather let us get rid of these critical values here. We just want to have an expression for K1, that is the stress intensity factor with respect to the stress that is being imposed. So this is the expression for it. And now we want to consider the change in the stress that we impose on the material with respect to the stress intensity factor. This is given by 2 pi r and the square root here. Now when you substitute this expression for the stress intensity factor in here, what you would end up having is the normal stress that is acting within the system, particularly that normal stress that is acting in the crack, will be equal to sigma rho pi a, and you can get rid of these pi's, and this will be nothing like a by 2. So what we have essentially done is you have replaced the stress intensity factor with this description, and now you have the expression for a stress that is acting on the crack with respect to the stress that you impose. This is the stress that is acting on the crack with respect to the stress that you impose, and it is dependent on the size of the crack and the position of the crack. Now, when you take the ratio of these two, this is the amount in which the stress that is acting around the crack is changed with respect to the stress you are imposing. So this is the stress that you are imposing, and this is the stress that is acting on the crack. So when you take the ratio, this is the change in the stress that is acting around the crack, and this is nothing but this we refer to as the coefficient of stress intensity. So this coefficient of stress intensity, that is amount of change because of the crack, or amount of change a crack experiences because of its dimension, is of this form. Now, this expression, it is introduced, or it is defined for a conventional shape of the crack, something like this. However, we saw in the previous lecture, this expression is dependent or is wholly based on a conventional shape, something like this. However, we saw in the previous lecture, for creep, the shape of the crack, it depends on several factors. So one of the factor is the amount of surface and grain boundary diffusion, if you could recollect the previous lecture. So depending on which diffusion is dominant, the shape of the crack would vary. Supposing this is the surface crack will be along this direction, and the grain boundary diffusion will be along in this direction rather. So the surface diffusion will be along the red, and the grain boundary diffusion will be along the blue. Now depending on which one is dominant, the shape of this crack would vary. When the surface diffusion is dominant, you would have a close to a circular crack, and when the grain boundary diffusion is dominant, then the crack's shape will be far away from that of the circular shape. So that means the shape of the crack depends on which diffusion is dominant. And in addition to that, we also saw when you have a grain boundary sliding based crack growth, the shape is never close to a circular shape. And we also saw that in case of constrained growth, even that mode of growth influences the shape of the crack. So what it essentially means is that this A here that governs the coefficient of stress intensity significantly varies in creep, meaning the coefficient of stress intensity, that is this ratio here, considerably vary when in high temperature failure because of its dependence on the shape of the crack. So one difference when you compare the fracture mechanics of the ambient temperature to that of the high temperature, in addition to that with respect to the stress intensity factor and the rate at which the strain energy is released. In addition to these two differences, an additional difference is brought about by the coefficient of stress intensity, that is this ratio here, because this will be hugely dependent on the shape of the cracks. And since it is dependent on the shape of the cracks, and at high temperature you have several factors governing the shape of the cracks, you have to take special care while formulating the coefficient of stress intensity. So that means the coefficient of stress intensity varies when depending on which temperature the material fails and what is the dominating mode of the growth of the cracks. So these are the three aspects that are different when you compare the crack propagation at high temperature to that of the crack propagation at the ambient temperature. Now all these concepts, the concepts that we have seen, that is with respect to the stress intensity factor, that is this one here, and the strain energy release rate, both these factors, they come under linear elastic fracture mechanics. So these differences, particularly based on these two, that is the stress intensity factor and the strain energy release rate, both these come under linear elastic fracture mechanics. However, when you consider a polycrystalline system, and in the real case wherein you have particularly at high temperature wherein you have a crack propagation, there is some amount of plasticity that is associated with it, meaning because of the stress intensity, since around the cracks you have an increase in the stress, so this stress might go beyond the yield strength of the material, thereby introducing a plastic deformation in the material. So therefore the linear elastic fracture mechanics, or this consideration rendered by the linear elastic, is rather restricted. So you need to extend this understanding to elastoplastic consideration. So when you consider when you extend your study to the elastoplastic region, when you include the plastic deformation that is introduced by the crack, then the expression for the strain energy release rate or the equivalence of the strain energy release rate gets varied. And here, in case of the elastoplastic fracture mechanics, the equivalent of the strain energy release rate would be J integral. So if you could recollect, in case of while we introduced this strain energy release rate, we considered the overall work that is being done by the system. So this work done on the system, we are considering the change in the surface area or the growth of the fracture, and we are considering the energy stored in the system. Now the J integral is similar to this. The foundation for the expression of the J integral is similar to this. However, we need to include a region surrounding the crack, because now we have to consider the plastic deformation that is introduced by the crack. So for that, we consider a path. We consider a line integral and we consider a path, and J integral is nothing but this line integral along this path. Now, in this path, we need to consider the stress that is acting perpendicular to each of these points in this loop. In this integration part, we have a stress that is acting perpendicular, and this stress we have to consider it in the form of the tensor. I don't really want to get into what a tensor is here, but it is not just a magnitude, it includes both directions, and not just one direction but few more directions. So we are talking about so if you are not ready to get into this tensor, let us just define this particular term here as the normal stress acting at a point in this integration path. So it's a normal stress acting at a point in this, at a point, and within this path wherein we are taking our line integration. Now, the displacement associated with this point is referred to as u. Again, these are not just scalar values, so we have a different notation for this is supposed to be t and this is supposed to be u, and since they are not scalar value, I have it's been mentioned in this manner. Now, we are trying to find an equivalent of the strain energy release rate. So for that, we have to consider or we have to define the J integral in the similar manner. We take the integration along the path that we have considered, and in that we have to consider the strain energy per unit volume, that we can represent it as W, and we take the product of the normal stress that is acting at a point in the integration path and the change in the displacement. So you have a displacement because of this normal stress and this change in the displacement along the path. So this is what it defines the J integral. So you have strain energy per unit volume and you have the combination of normal stress and the displacement. So this would be the change in the internal energy somewhere close to it, and this would be the work done by the system, and the difference of it when you consider along this line integral will give you the J integral, and this J integral, which is what governs or what dictates the criteria for the propagation of the crack at the ambient condition. So in case of fracture mechanics, when you're talking about in the realm of the elastoplastic fracture mechanics, you talk it in terms of the J integral. And the J integral, the change is that you introduce strain energy per unit volume, and also you introduce the normal stress acting along the integration path and the displacement along the integration path. Now this is for the ambient temperature or normal consideration of the elastoplastic fracture mechanics. Now if you extend it, or if you want to treat or have a similar term for the high temperature, the way it is changed or modified is of this manner. For creep, this particular J integral will be expressed in this manner. So this is nothing but the rate at which the material is strained, at which the material is strained, or simply it's nothing but the strain rate, and this is, you have here the displacement rate. So instead of considering the displacement and the strain energy alone, we are considering the strain rate, meaning the rate at which the strain energy is changing, and the displacement rate with respect to the different points along the integration path. So we are introducing, when you consider the high temperature failure of the material or the creep failure of the material, the J integral is correspondingly changed by considering the strain rate. So this is equivalent to that of the strain rate that we have considered, and this is the displacement rate, the rate of displacement with respect to the position along the integration path. So these are the modification. In addition, in case of the linear elastic fracture mechanics, the modification was in terms of the strain energy release rate and the stress intensity factor. In case of the elastoplastic fracture mechanics, the J integral is correspondingly modified by introducing the strain rate and the displacement rate. So ultimately, a simpler definition for the J integral at high temperature, or the high temperature J integral, is of this form. This is proportional to the change in the, this is nothing but the U is nothing but the potential energy, and this is supposed to be A, the size of the crack. So U dot is the change in the rate of potential energy change. So change in the rate of potential energy is referred to as the J integral at high temperature. So what we have essentially done is we have essentially changed the dynamic variables that define the J integral at ambient temperature. And by doing so, we have arrived at a new description for the J integral at high temperature, and this is equivalent to that of the rate of change of potential energy. So whenever you have a crack that is growing, the criteria for the growth of the crack at high temperature is not governed by a definite term, but a change in the rate of potential energy change, or change in the rate of potential energy. Okay, so instead of considering an individual term, a change in the potential energy, we are considering the change in the rate of potential energy. So here we are considering the change in the strain energy, change in the displacement. But when we are considering the high temperature failure of the material, we are considering the change in the rate of strain and change in the rate of displacement. So ultimately what we are essentially considering is the change in the potential energy, or the change in the rate of potential energy is what governs the creep or the failure at high temperature. So what we have essentially done is we have defined criteria for linear elastic fracture mechanics that is based on the stress intensity factor and then the strain energy release rate, and these we defined for the high temperature condition, and we have modified the fracture mechanics at high temperature. So these expressions, they are readily available, or we have already, these are well established in the fracture mechanics, and we have modified it for the high temperature. And in case of elastoplastic fracture mechanics, we have modified the J integral by replacing the strain energy with the rate of change of strain energy that is equivalent to the strain rate, and the displacement with the rate of displacement. So by making this modification, we have arrived at the criteria for describing the propagation of crack at high temperature. In addition to these two, we have considered the coefficient of stress intensity, which is the ratio of the normal stress that is acting on the crack, and with respect to the stress that you impose, this is dependent on shape. So in these three ways, we have the influence of high temperature on the crack propagation. So we have made a theoretical consideration, and these considerations largely vary when you consider the high temperature crack propagation. And here this difference is based on the change in the stress intensity factor, and the change in the stress intensity factor is because of the shape, or rather the sharpness of the edges of the crack. And at high temperature, since you have a blend crack, the amount of stress intensity factor, or the magnitude of it, decreases at high temperature, and correspondingly your strain energy release rate, or the criteria based on it, changes. And here, instead of considering a definite strain energy, a definite strain, a definite displacement, we consider the strain energy rate, or the strain rate, and the displacement rate. This is equivalent to that of the strain rate. And this expression, or the new expression for the J integral, is nothing but the rate of change in the potential energy, change in the rate of potential energy with respect to the growth of the crack. So when you have a favorable change in the rate of change of potential energy, you have an energetically favorable crack propagation. If not, the crack propagation is stunted. So in this lecture, as a way of completing our discussion on the high temperature failure of the materials, we have considered the theoretical aspects of that govern the failure of the material, or the propagation of cracks at high temperature. In the subsequent lecture, we will move away from the failure to how the surface of the material behaves at high temperature. Particularly, we will see oxidation of the material. We will begin with considering the oxidation of the material at high temperature, and then we will build on it. So with this lecture, I would like to wind up as a completion of what we have been seeing so far. That is the failure of the material at high temperature. Now we have seen the nucleation, we have seen the growth, we have seen the formation of microcracks, and we have seen the growth of the cracks, albeit in a concise manner that is relevant to the high temperature. So let us see ourselves in the next lecture, where we will begin by considering how the surface changes or how the surface interacts with the surroundings at high temperature. Goodbye.